Hi, this is Christy Moore with 1,000 Calls a Day, and today I'm going to talk to you about how you can increase your qualified leads by 21 times. The first thing to understand when you're following up with these leads is that you have to have the long-term mindset. So unless the lead is a pre-foreclosure or somebody that has to sell yesterday, most of the seller leads that you are going to get are going to be anywhere from 6 to 18 months out. 85% of the leads you get are more than 90 days out. Only 15% are 90 days or less. So if you're only going after the hot leads that are right now, you're missing almost 85% of the business. So having that long-term mindset and understanding that it's about speed to lead, following up, and the scripts is really, really important so that you can track your pipeline for what you have in future business. So for instance, we always label somebody a nurturer if they're doing something within 1 year or less. And we can pretty much guarantee that we're going to convert about 10% of our nurtures. So when we look at our pipeline, we're looking at how many nurtures we have, so how much future business we have in the pipeline, not just what we have right now today. And when you're following up with people, it's really important to come from a place of empathy and understanding. Because a lot of these people are in situations where they do have to sell, or they're dealing with life transitions or situations in life that are very difficult and very challenging. And what we do as real estate agents and real estate investors is solve people's problems. And a lot of times those problems, especially when it comes to real estate, cannot be solved overnight. So it's really important to come from the standpoint of understanding that this is a relationship that you're building, it is a long-term plan, and that you're coming from a place of empathy and understanding. So when you're talking to these people, they feel as though you care and you're not just looking for a deal. So there are 3 things you need to know about how to increase your conversions. The first is speed to lead. So when you first get the lead into your inbox, it's important to call them immediately. Studies have shown that if you don't call the lead within the first 5 minutes, the conversion drops by 21 times. And that's between 5 minutes and a half an hour. After 20 hours, it almost makes no sense to even call the lead because your odds of contacting them drop by over 1,000 times. So the first thing that you need to do when you get a lead from 1,000 Calls a Day is call them immediately and call them often. So that leads me to number 2, which is follow-up. It's super important that you follow up with your leads on a consistent basis. So we generally recommend that you call the lead 3 times the first day, 3 times the second day, and once a day, every day after that, for up to 14 contacts. If at that point you still haven't reached the lead, then it's important to reach out to them in other methods, either via email or text. And if you still don't reach the lead, then at that point you can trash the lead. But if you follow that process, you should be able to reach about 95% of the leads that are given to you. And I know that because that's been our results with the leads in our brokerage. We've been able to reach about 95% of them if we follow that process. And usually we can reach them in the first 2 days. The other part of the follow-up is to, after you reach the lead, is to continue to follow up with them to find out what their time frame is and find out if anything's changed. It's very rare that you're going to set an appointment immediately and the appointment's going to keep and you're going to get that deal. For the most part, people need to be nurtured. So when you talk to them and you find out what their motivation is and you find out what their time frame is, call them back in half the time that they tell you. So if they say that they're going to be moving in 3 months or they're going to be finalizing their divorce in 4 months, you call them back in half the time. So in 4 months, you would call them back in 2, 3 months, you'd call them back in a month and a half. If you feel like there's more motivation there than they're leading on, you can even call them back sooner. But the important thing is that you're early and not late, that you're calling them back in half the time they tell you versus the amount of time that they tell you. Because usually what you'll find is that once you call them back during the time they tell you, they've already sold their property or they're already working with somebody else. So it's important that you're early versus on time with that type of situation. The other thing that follow-up does is it creates trust. So when you tell somebody you're going to follow up with them and you do, now you've created trust with the lead. And this is about building a relationship, whether it's a regular real estate deal or an investment deal, a lot of people aren't going to convert right away. They need to trust you, they need to like you, and they need to understand that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Because at the end of the day, if you're telling them that you're going to buy their house or you're going to sell their house, they need to believe you and they need to trust in that process. The other thing that's important when you're doing follow-up is to dig deeper and find out more information about what's going on in their lives and what's happening, because at first they're going to give you a bunch of blow-off statements. They're just going to say, oh, well, I was just curious, or oh, I'm not really that serious, or oh, I'm not really looking to do anything, when really, if we sent the lead over, they had some type of motivation. So it's important to ask more qualifying and clarifying questions, such as, well, if you were to move, when do you think that might be? Is there anything specific that's happening during that time that's causing you to sell? And ask more specific questions about their time frame and why they're looking to move during that time. And what we found is that if you ask them 3 times, if they were to move, when do you think that might be, and ask them in different ways, you'll actually get the truth on the 3rd round. So the last question that we ask people when we are talking to them is it okay if I follow up with you at a later time? Because you want to have that permission. And then the next question is, okay, so when do you think would be a good time for me to call you back? And it's amazing how many people tell you they're moving in 6 months, but they want to call back in 2 weeks. So if they want to call back in 2 weeks, why are they asking for a call back in 2 weeks when their time frame is 6 months? It's usually because they weren't telling you the truth up front, and now they're getting more to the real situation and what's really going on in their lives. And a lot of times they're testing you to see if you're actually going to follow through on what you say. The third thing that leads to successful lead conversion is the script that you use. So it's important to have a script, and it's important to ask the right questions in the right ways so that you can get the information out of them that you need to get to follow up. So when we first call the leads back, what we say is, hey, this is Christy Moore with Local Expert Realty, and I just wanted to follow up with you because you spoke with my brand new assistant, and I just wanted to verify some information that you gave her. And that's it. And that opens up the conversation. And once you start verifying the information, you'll feel that they kind of calm down. Originally they'll have their guard up when you first call, but once you say who you are and why you're calling, they will open up because they are verifying the information versus just asking them pointed questions. Then after we verify the information, then we clarify the information. So you said that you were looking to move in 6 months. If we could get you an offer that met your bottom line today, would you sell today, or do you still want to wait for 6 months? And that clarifies the real motivation. So do you really need to move in 6 months? Or if we could do something today, would you do it today? The other thing that you want to ask them is, if you were to move, when do you think that might be? Because a lot of people will say they're not serious, they're not motivated, and they won't give you an exact answer. But when you say it in that way, you're giving them a hypothetical situation where if you had to guess, hypothetically, if you were moving, when would that be? And that allows them to open up their mind to when they think they might move. And again, you're asking the same question, just in a different way. Then you want to ask them if they're already working with somebody, are they under contract with an agent? Do they have any contracts on the property? So you want to know if you have competition, or if they're actively interviewing people, or if they already have offers on the table. And if they do have offers on the table, it's always good to ask them what they are. And sometimes they'll tell you and sometimes they won't. But it's really good to get that information up front so you know what you're walking into. And if they aren't ready to meet right now, which a lot of people won't be ready to meet right now, then you want to ask permission to follow up. So would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? And when do you think would be a good time for me to call you back? And whatever time frame they give you when you ask when would be a good time for me to call you back is what you cut in half. So when you call them back in half the time, you're going to get more information from them. They're going to start opening up to you because you followed up with them. Most people never follow up. So if you do follow up, now you have set yourself apart from everyone else, and you did what you said you were going to do. So people actually appreciate it. A lot of salespeople think that they're bothering people when they're following up, but that's what people want. They want people to do things for them. They want people to follow up. They want people to do what they say they're going to do. So if you just follow up in half the time, that will set you set you apart from your competition, and it should allow you to get much greater results from your lead conversion. This is Christy Moore with 1,000 Calls a Day. To download our sample scripts and our follow-up plan, please click on the link below.